Just remember to unmute yourself, Kemble, when you can. Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to the Sunday International Big Books Workshop. Hi, I'm Dan. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Sobriety date 1st of February 2021. This workshop is facilitated by Kemble H. This study relies on you listening, but please, we pray that you have your big book in hand and follow along with a pen or pencil or highlighter. Make any notes you need and pause if you have to. Write down any questions and we'll answer them at the end of the meeting. We will keep everybody muted during the workshop except for the facilitators. Any inappropriate behavior will not be tolerated and you will be removed by one of the co-hosts. This meeting is being recorded. The audio portion only is being recorded and only of the facilitators. It will be shut down at the end of the meeting to answer any questions in order to preserve your anonymity. Here at the meeting, we start with the third step prayer found on page 63. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Amen. And with that, it's over to you, Kemble.
Okay, thank you, Dan, for leading us off. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm a recovered alcoholic named Kemble. Sobriety date is February the 3rd, 2020, and I am a member of the Keystone group. For years, I suffered from alcoholism to the highest degree, but I didn't find a solution to 3 years ago when miraculously God intervened and led me to this Keystone group, and since I've recovered from alcoholism, and it's a beautiful thing. Last week we touched on God and a little bit of religion, God and AA, and where the concepts came from, where the original steps come from, the concepts of the steps came from. And it's a decent study. Just went back in a little bit of history last week. But today I'd like to touch on a powerful word that's found in our big book, and it's called faith. So welcome anybody new, anybody coming back, anybody struggling, or anybody willing to grow and learn in this experience that we go through in AA. We alcoholics, we suffer from that allergy, we suffer from a malady. Us chronic alcoholics were doomed. If we didn't get a solution, we were doomed to a chronic alcoholic death or to accept spiritual hell. For me, 42 years of drinking, I always thought I could solve my own problems, but I never could. I had to develop some kind of faith in other than something besides myself and a whiskey bottle, right? I always had faith in a whiskey bottle that it was going to get me drunk when I started drinking it. But what I didn't have faith in was faith in a power that would be greater than me, that could fix my problem or solve my problem. I simply didn't believe God could help me in any kind of way. That's just the way I felt. That's from my experience. But one thing I learned over the years, I learned that he was with me the whole time, but I didn't realize it, because at a certain point, I got to playing God. I thought I was God, but, that didn't work either. But anyway, I want to start off by sharing a little snippet from one of Bill Wilson's Grapevine articles back in 1961, April 1961, as a matter of fact. Was when this article was produced. I won't read it all. It's just a few things I'd like to touch on. And it's called Faith. And it's God as we understand him is the subtitle, right? So it goes on to say, the phrase God as we understand him is perhaps the most important expression to be found in our whole AA vocabulary. Within the compass of these 5 significant words, there can be included every kind of degree of faith, together with the positive assurance that each of us may choose his own. Scarcely less valuable to us are those supplemental expressions, a higher power and a power greater than ourselves. For all who deny or seriously doubt a deity, These frame an open door over whose threshold the unbeliever can take his first easy step into a reality hitherto unknown to him, the realm of faith. So in the same article, Bill talks about God as we understand him, the dilemma of no faith. And that story is found in the language of the heart. It's a great story as well. So, we suffer, like I mentioned, we suffer from a lack of faith and all of that good stuff. So faith occurs actually 85 times in our literature, 36 in the big book and 49 in our 12 and 12. But the purpose of this meeting, we focus on the big book, 12 and 12 didn't fix my alcoholism either. So this basic text in the big book is what enabled me to find that power that was greater than myself, which would solve my problem. So a definition of faith, right? Now, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Faith is assurance of things hoped for. I would always hope to get sober one day, but I ain't had no kind of faith. I ain't even know what faith was. I just knew when I touched that bottle, right, shoot, it was gonna solve all my problems. I used alcohol as a solution. The faith was a byproduct of my alcoholism. I didn't have faith in nothing else. I ain't even have faith in myself. But then when I took that drink, I had all the faith in the world. Faith, faith that I was God. I was the big man. I was this and I was all of that. But that was a lie. So I'd like to start on Dan, page 49, everybody. And I'll tell you what to go to. This is important in my recovery here. At the bottom of page, last paragraph of page 49, Brother Dan, you read that for us, where it says, "We who have traveled this dubious path."
Yeah, no problem. Page 49, last paragraph. We who have travelled this dubious path beg you to lay aside prejudice even against organized religion. We have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. People of faith have logical idea of what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to have no reasonable conception whatever, beg your pardon. We used to amuse ourselves by clinically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices, when we might have observed that many spiritual-minded persons of all races, colours and creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness and usefulness, which we should have sought ourselves.
Okay, thank you, brother. Great reading, powerful paragraph. And it makes a lot of sense. So it begs us, to lay aside prejudice even against organized religion. As I shared last week, AA is not a religious program, it is a spiritual program. But the concept came from a religious program, which was the Oxford group. So in my experience, I've seen religious people, they seem to be living pretty good lives, where my life wasn't lived so well because due to alcoholism. So it says lay aside prejudice. So at the beginning of taking these steps, I had to learn, well, maybe these people are right. Maybe this big book is right. Maybe I can develop something by taking these steps that's presented in this big book. So, the big book makes a statement that the power that's greater than ourselves, it will solve our problem. In my instance, I never thought anything could solve my problem. I thought I was going to die a chronic alcoholic death. So it goes on to say, we have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose to direction to millions. So different faiths. See, we don't have any designated faith here in AA, but we do need to develop faith in something greater than we are. And it took me a long time to learn that, man. It took me a long time. So that makes me think about Bill Wilson back on page 12, right? We all know, back on page 10, my bad. We all know how Bill was, and I have a story just like Bill. But I went to a lot more treatment centers than he did. So Bill, he had always believed in a power that was greater than himself. You know, and it says he often pondered these things. He said he was not an atheist, right? So Bill was an agnostic. Uh, Now Jimmy Burwell that we mentioned, I couldn't think of the name earlier because I had a brain cramp. He was an atheist, right? But you know, AA solved his alcoholic problem. So we don't demand we have any particular belief, any concept, or whatever. It's whatever you choose to have faith and belief in. But you know, an atheist can believe as well, right? He believes the sun gonna come up tomorrow morning in the same place, and it's gonna set tomorrow. What is that? But some sort of faith, even if you are atheist. I consider myself an agnostic. I was an agnostic, right? Because I grew up in a religious organization, right? Grew up in church. That's like when I got old enough, I left home and alcohol took over my life. Uh, I kind of left the church for a while, but years later I came back. But you know, my religion didn't solve my alcohol problem either. It took going through the steps here in AA and finding something greater than me, which you know I choose to call God today, and He actually solved my problem. So then it goes on to mention people of faith have a logical idea of what life is all about. It mentions people of faith. Well, we may wonder, how can we develop some kind of a faith? Well, faith is something that we have to learn. We have to learn about what we're facing, like we learned the great nature of alcoholism. In order to develop faith, we got this information. And you know, the information actually for me, it ran from the title page. Well, the first portion of this big book, as I started studying it, I started to believe, well, maybe this can work for me too. But see, that brings into step two, came to believe. In order to come to believe in something, you have to see what you may want to believe in order to start developing some form of faith. Just like in my religion, I had to develop some faith that God was real, and I've seen the evidence. You know, it says we hope for the things that's not seen. You know, we can't see the faith. We can't see it. We can't feel it. We can't touch it. But it is there from shown by the evidence in our lives. And it's going to be seen by the people around us first, and then we'll gradually see it ourselves. So people, they had an idea of what life was all about. They weren't out here killing themselves with alcohol and other things like we did. So on page 49, it goes on to mention, actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatsoever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices. No doubt, I dissected everything that somebody tried to teach me when I was growing up and when I got grown. I simply had to take it apart. We know what dissecting means, right? Like back in school, I used to have to go dissect these frogs, right? Taking out piece by piece. So when it came to spiritual concepts to me, I had my own belief. I was simply believing in myself and nothing else. But you know, dissecting all spiritual principles. I take one and throw it out, take another one and throw it out. Well, that one don't do me no good, that one don't do me no good. But I was simply closed-minded, to be honest with you. So that's why I couldn't do it. So, and then it goes on, uh, when we might have observed that many spiritually minded persons of all creeds for sale. You know, we could see these people. They was living stable lives. They wasn't losing homes. They wasn't going to jails and all of that stuff. Look, that would be consequences, right? But for the alcoholic like me, I was going through dire consequences, near-death consequences, jails and prisons and rehab, detox centers, because I simply could not believe in nothing other than myself at the time. So here on page 51, uh, matter of fact, the start of, no, bottom of page 50, last paragraph. I'll read this one right quick, Dan. And it goes on to say, here are thousands of men and women, worldly indeed. They flatly declare that since they have come to believe in a power greater than themselves, to take a certain attitude toward that power and to do certain simple things. There has been a revolutionary change in their way of living and thinking. No doubt about it. Now here's the examples from the first 100 men and women. This is a collective experience. And then they relate that on one proposition, however, these men and women are strikingly agreed. Every one of them has gained access to and believes in a power greater than himself. This power has in each case accomplished the miraculous, the humanly impossible. The miraculous, the human impossible. We in Alcoholics Anonymous who have recovered from this seeming hopeless state of mind and body, we are miracles today, and it's a blessing. You know, and the book goes on to say later on that, you know, we are all miracles of mental health. And so true it is. You know, I didn't have quite a life. I lived for alcohol. I would die for alcohol. That's just the way my life ran. But on page 51, Dan, where it says they show, top first paragraph, like the fourth sentence, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth sentence where it says they show how change came over them.
Beg your pardon, I was just in the middle of removing. What was the page, sorry?
Oh, page 51.
Yeah.
Where it says they show, yeah, they show,
They show. Is that right? Sorry.
Yeah, they show
how
yeah,
the
they
change
show
came
how
over them.
Yeah.
When many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives, they present a powerful reason why one should have faith.
Yes, thank you, Brother Dan. Yeah, no doubt. These people show us in this book. See, this book gonna present us a recipe. You know, how we can develop faith, and then what that faith can do for us. We have to come to believe in something first, and then we follow a few screws. You know, this big book presents us a recipe throughout the book. Because it's a spiritual structure. Bill builds this spiritual structure all through this book, and that helped me to develop some faith. Well, at first I thought, well, maybe if I can just have faith or belief that this big book will help me, but I had to have somebody to take me through it in order to develop that faith and following the suggestions, following precisely how they did it. See, I couldn't in the fellowship for many years. People weren't teaching me directly from the book. They was presenting me their own conceptions, their own opinions, and their own attitudes. And that's why I failed in AA so many times. Until somebody that properly went through this process and they presented this conception to me, then I could develop some faith. And we're gonna talk about that too. And it's grounded. Once we can develop that faith, you know, realize a person like me, I had to realize I needed some help. I was just doomed. I was terrible. So I had to have some help. And you know, when I'm talking about, see, there's that word faith again. So notice every paragraph we're gonna go over today gonna have something about faith in it. And faith was an important factor to me. And and then it goes on to mention when many hundreds of people are able to say that the consciousness of the presence of God is today the most important fact of their lives, they present a powerful reason why one should have faith. Well, in order to develop some faith, you know, I had to pay a high price. I had to stop being self-centered and selfishness, self-seeking. I had to stop all of that because that's what kept me blocked from everything in the world. My own self, you know, I was the problem and I was my own solution. But my solution didn't work out too well. My solution failed me utterly every time because it always caused me to get another drink. And this was repeated over and over for me for 40 years, over 3 decades in the fellowship. I had no solution but nothing to take another drink. I talked last week about all the white chips I had got. I had got a truckload of them. So on page 53, I read this, and it's a short one, Dan. It goes on to say, it's the middle of the page on page 53. It says, when we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that God either is everything or he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? Yeah. See, first of all, I had to quit playing God, right? Then I could develop faith in something. Well, God is greater than me. God is greater than all of us, right? So, you know, and that was a big turning point for me, and it brings me back uh, to page 62. It runs me over to page 62. I think I just mentioned something about that, where it says selfishness, self-centeredness, that is the root of all of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. Yes, thousands of forms of self-seeking, self-pity, and all that good stuff. That's when I was trying to run the show myself, because I always thought I had control. And you know, this is a step two proposition. You know, what was our choice to be? Step two, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. But you know, I had to develop some faith in order to even think about believing in this power that is greater than myself. And uh, and it talks about worship on the next page, page 54. We're going to touch on page 54 for a moment. And it talks about worship. The first full paragraph, Brother Dan, where it says, we found too that we had been worshipers.
Yeah, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Page 54.
Yeah.
We found too that we had been worshippers. What a state of mental goose flesh that used to bring on. Had we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves? And then, with a better motive, had we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower? Who of us had not loved something or somebody? How much did these feelings, these loves, these worships have to do with the pure reason? Little or nothing. We saw at last, were not these things the tissue out of which our lives were constructed? Did not these things, feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? It was impossible to say we had no capacity for faith or love or worship. In one form or another, we had been living by faith and little else.
Yeah, thank you, brother. And so true. And it says we found too that we had been worshipers anyway. We always worship something, right? We worship people. I can remember worshiping people, girlfriends, wives, basketball, all of that good stuff, football, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves. That's a bad spot to be in when we worship ourselves, and that's part of the self-centeredness that we alcoholics face. You know, the world is covered. The human condition of most humans evolves around self-centeredness. But for the alcoholic, it's much worse. See, we can't see the differentiate the true from the false. And then it talks about worshiping things, worshiping money, and then it goes on to relate, had we not worshipfully beheld a sunset, a sea, or a flower. Yeah, we all had some form of worship, whether we knew it or not. Uh, wow. And then it goes on to ask a question. It says, how much do these feelings, these loves, these worships have to do with pure reason? And then the big book's going to answer this question. It goes on to say, little or nothing we saw at last. So these things we worship were futile. That means that they was actually in vain because we couldn't make no progress. At least I couldn't make no progress. I don't know about y'all, but I know I couldn't, no doubt. So were not these things the tissue out of which our lives were constructed? And then next another question, did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? Yeah, it really did. So it was then impossible for us to say that we had no capacity for faith or love or worship. In one form or another, we had been living by faith and little else. But you know, at this point, I was blinded by faith, which I'm sure we all probably suffered a little bit from that. We're blinded by self. Self kept us from having some type of faith. So in this state of mind, uh, believers were like two alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter end, or the other to accept spiritual help. And then the big books asks another question. Imagine life without faith. Wow. That'd be pretty hard to do. Imagine life without some type of faith. And I share this quite a bit. I always had faith when that malady hit me and I'm at the liquor store. I said, well, I'm going to have faith that when I give me 3, 4, 5 drinks, I'm going to be good to go. And that's how it was. So that was having faith that that whiskey was going to do the job for me when I was out of my feeling. I wanted to feel a different type of way. But we all know how the story went. Baffled by the seemingly futility of alcoholism, I had the utter inability to leave it alone. Now, here's one of my favorite pages in the big book. So Dan will start sharing with me on page 55. Actually, we were fooling ourselves.
Actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship, or of other things, but in some form or other it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. Shall I carry on?
Yeah, carry on to the next end of this paragraph. Yeah.
We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it is only there that he may be found. It was so with us.
All right. Thank you, my brother. Thank you much. Oh, I was just looking at something. Actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. No doubt. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it is there. Here's that big word again: for faith and a power greater than ourselves, and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself. No doubt. When we was out there worshiping other things, it was the life around us at the time. You know, by pomp, by worship of other things, as we shared on the page before. Those were a lot of things that I worshiped. I couldn't worship God when I thought I was God. I could only worship myself, you know, and that was a problem in this area. But you know, what my problem really was lack of power. That was our dilemma. I simply couldn't believe in a power that was greater than myself. No, only thing I believed in was that another drink. But thank God for AA. AA changed all of that when I was taken through this, and I gained a connection with that power. So here the big book tells us where that power is to be found. You know, it also says, you know, the main object of this book is to enable us to find a power greater than myself, which will solve your problem. So it says we found that great reality deep down within us. The power was there all the time, but we didn't have a connection. So we need to gain a connection to this power. And it's a little bit about how it was done or how it was taught. You know, in step one, you know, they told me I was powerless over alcohol, that my life was totally unmanageable. And that's so true, because I was powerless. The reason I was powerless, because I couldn't control the amount that I took when I took a drink. I was unmanageable because I simply couldn't stop, no matter how great or wish the necessity would be. I could try to wish alcoholism away, or I could wish to drink away, but it never worked. I could try this crazy stuff they was telling me to do, just don't pick it up, or put the plug in the jug and just go to meetings and you will make it. My life was unmanageable. I needed to gain a solution. Instead of the problem, because the problem kept piling up to another problem, and then problem. The problem was I simply couldn't stop it. So I had to learn to fully concede, well, I'm a darn alcoholic. I had to concede that to my innermost self. Then my eyes could open up a little bit. Then step two, I come to believe, was coming to believe. Uh, and it's a simple fact that, coming to believe don't mean at the moment you have to believe in anything right now, but just an idea. See, step two is an idea. And it's grounded, the idea was maybe this power that these people are going to teach me about. They're going to show me, this power. If I can gain a relationship with it, it will solve my problem. But how do I gain this relationship? Well, then I think about step three, right? And then it goes on to say, step three prayer, as a matter of fact, it mentions that God, I offer myself to thee to be with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self. See, self is our greatest problem. Obsessed with self. I know I was obsessed with myself uh, because I always thought I had control of the situation. I always thought I could fix this problem. I always thought I could fix that problem. Thought I could fix everybody's problems but my own. But then the bottom line is, come out to see, I was the problem myself. I was the problem. But it took me so many years to realize that. And because I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop what I was doing. My attitude was so bad. I simply hurt everybody that I ran into. Now the big book talks about we alcoholics like a tornado rolling through the lives of other people, right? Yeah, well, mine was probably much worse than a tornado. I used to call myself a walking hurricane, and that's just the way it was with me. I destroyed structures. I destroyed people. I went through human beings like it was okay, and I couldn't even see where I was wrong. I always thought I was right about everything. But thank God for this program. When I did get to step four, I had a chance to write all these things down, and I said, "Wow, wow, wow! Yep." I checked this off, and I checked that off, and everything was definitely mine. So, so the big book says our troubles we think are basically of our own making. But then again, at the end of step three, right, it says the first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. That's so true. Uh, self, that's my greatest issue. So on page, I think that makes me think back to page 16. I have a note here that I'd like to share. Okay, yeah. And it goes on to read, an alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. Our struggles with them are variously strenuous, comic, and tragic. One poor chap committed suicide in my home. He could not or would not see our way of life. Now, this is Bill talking about the guy that committed suicide in his home. He could not or he would not see our way of life. So he was running on self-will. He couldn't seek a solution. He couldn't get into it. But then Bill goes on to relate on this very page. Faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us, or we perish. So faith has to work for us type of alcoholic. There's no way around it. Without faith, it is impossible for us to believe in something greater than ourselves. So it would be impossible for us to get sober. That's the way it was with me. So, but then there's hope. Now, this big book brings us hope from the very title page, where it goes on to read the story of Alcoholics Anonymous, how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. Last week we did talk about the foundation stone. So I'm going to talk about another stone right now while it's on my mind, and it's found on page 25 in our big book. There is a solution. And let's see. Okay, Dan, at the top of page 25, where it's in italics, there is a solution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you read down to where it talks about the fourth dimension, and we can stop right there.
Fourth dimension. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Page 25, everybody. There is a solution. Almost none of us liked the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings which the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence, of which we had not even dreamed.
Okay, thank you, brother. You know, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Well, the path that they bring about in this big book is the kit of spiritual tools that's laid at our feet. You know, the program is a spiritual program, and it's simple, but it's not easy. So none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings. You know, these are some of the steps we go through, which the process requires for a successful consummation. Yeah, we didn't like that. No, I didn't like that part. But you know, I messed up the courage to go ahead and I needed to do this. So I had to just sit down and I had to do that inventory. I had to take it to God and to another person. I had everything down in black and white. You know, I didn't like it, but it had to be done. I had to level my pride. See, I was prideful old joker. I was too proud to even ask for help, too proud to seek for help, too proud to accept help. I wanted to do everything on my own because I thought I could do it on my own. But you know, the lie detector determined, no, Kim, you can't do none of this on your own. You got to have some help. You're a darn alcoholic. So then it goes on to mention, but what we saw what really worked in others, we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living. Yes, no doubt about it. My life was simply hopeless. I was helpless. I couldn't see nothing. I was blinded. It's like anybody ever had tunnel vision here, you know, like when you can't see nothing on the sides, all you can see is something straight ahead and it's all dark. That's the way my life was for a very long time. But coming to believe, it really helped me so much. Well, maybe now, if I can do this, if I can do that, but what this book is teaching me and my sponsors teaching me, maybe I can get the same experience that they had. So then it goes on again. There was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. This required a lot of humility on my part. You know, God had to humble me down because I was very, very hard-headed, as they called it. No, my head was so hard. I didn't want to hear nothing you had to say. I didn't want to hear no suggestion. I didn't want to hear no commands. I was simply hard-headed. But one day this alcohol beat me down so bad, I had no choice but to become humble. When God stepped in, yes, I seen I was nothing because I'm nothing anyway. If I couldn't stop myself from drinking, that means I'm screwed, totally screwed. Wow. But then again, it says we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. I never dreamed I could live the life what Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me today. The fourth dimension that they're mentioning about is a spiritual dimension. Instead of being rooted in self, I have a spiritual way of living I can live in today. And it helps me make it throughout the day. See, every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all our activities. But we're not going to do this perfect now. No, there's going to be times stuff going to pop up. You know, dealing with people, that's going to cause quite an experience. We are human beings. We are not perfect. Nobody is. So we're gonna have situations. But you know, we can react differently today in any situation we might face. So that's just a little bit about this second stone. Now, like I said last week, we talked about the second part of the foundation. In other words, I talked about the foundation last week. If the foundation not solid, if it's not solid, not thick enough, it's just going to crumble. So talked about page 12 a little bit last Sunday. Then today is a little bit on page 25. So that's just one part of the process. That's the foundation. There's still more stones we have to put on, and we'll eventually get to these stones. Probably a short bit. Another thing that popped in my mind, page 49, Dan. No, we went through that. Take that back, page 68. We'll go to page 68. When it goes on to say, perhaps there is a better way. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Page 68, everybody. Perhaps there is a better way. We think so. For we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than finite selves. We are in the world to play the role he assigns, just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us and humbly rely on him. Does he enable us to match calamity with serenity?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, brother. No doubt. Perhaps there is a better way. My way was not a better way. My way was the wrong way. My way was killing me. I was dying of alcoholism in and out of these rooms. So, but we're now on a different basis. You know, once we get into the steps, the purpose of the steps, right? We need to develop a spiritual experience, or better known as a psychic change. And we developed this somewhere through the process. Mine happened pretty early in the process, actually. When I got rid of relying on myself, then I started developing a belief, and then I developed faith in God, which is the power that's greater than me. And then I could start trusting God. See, faith and trust, it really goes hand in hand. Instead of trusting myself to get through something today, I have to simply trust on God. And it solves all of my problems. It may take a little longer for him to solve them sometime, but normally I can stop, pause, and pray. He's going to take care of it. And this is rooted and grounded in step 11. See, step 2, right? When we're building this foundation and then we find out there is a solution, it's confirmed by when we take the rest of the steps. It's confirmed in step 12 by having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We try to carry this message to other alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So 2 is the idea, 12 is the confirmation of taking step 2, right? But we got to take the rest of the steps in between, of course. We can't skimp out on nothing. So today we trust infinite God rather than our finite self. You know, we are very limited people. We're human beings. But you know, this God of the universe, we can't see him, we can't feel him, we can't touch him. But I came to believe that he is there. He exists. You know, even if I was an atheist, I'd eventually would have to come to believe he exists somewhere. And the realm he exists in, we can't even comprehend it. So you know, it doesn't matter whether we atheist, agnostic, true believer, not trying to put you on no religious belief, or whatever your God is yours. I choose the God that I choose. It's a personal thing, personal for all of us. For me, it is that God of the universe up there. And then it goes on to say, we are in the world to play the role he assigns. Yeah, I used to think I was put here to just be what I wanted to do. I thought that was all okay, but evidence showed it wasn't. Not when you're out here hurting people, you getting hurt and you're causing all kind of damage and confusion. You're breaking up families. You running people out your life. That's not the way life should be. You know, I studied another big book, right? It taught me a lot of things as well over the years. But that's not how human beings supposed to act. Love is the greatest component in the world, right? I wasn't too loving during my drinking career because my evidence showed I was. But I'm going to jail for beating somebody up, or me getting beat up, drunk driving in my car, putting other people at risk in my car and outside the car, people on the road. That's not showing no kind of love for nobody but myself. Yeah, I always believe I can get in my car drunk and make it where I'm going. Self ain't where I was going was I ended up in a ditch or done hit somebody or somebody done hit me. But I simply didn't see him. That's that tunnel vision. It was all about me, 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 me. It's okay for me to get in the car and drive. Then the police pull me over and lock me up. No, they wrong. Y'all the wrong thing pulling me over. That's the attitude I had. Y'all leave me alone. Then I'm in a fight with them. You know, that's just some of my past experience. But then it goes on to say, just to the extent we do as we think he would have us and humbly rely on him. God didn't want us to be that way. He wanted us to treat people right. He wanted us to be obedient, right? Obedient to something. We got to be obedient to something. Uh, so today I simply have to rely on him. And I learned to rely on him through the program Alcoholics Anonymous and by practicing these principles in all my affairs. And I had to reiterate, not some of them, but they had to be practicing all my affairs for an alcoholic of my type. Though I recovered from alcoholism, I'm still a human being. But today the reaction to people is much different, and it's all because of this relationship with power. And then it goes on to say, he enables us to match calamity with serenity. Yes, I was calamitous in every situation in the world in my life, but thank God, he restored our sanity, right? And we can live in serenity today. We can live in peace. We can be humble today. Those are just some of the qualities that this program does for us. It does so much more for us. And by a simple reliance on a power that's greater than us. I was thinking about something here on page 87, which is rooted in step 11, right? And this deal with the relationship with this power. And it starts at the bottom of page 87. When it goes, I get this from Brother Dan. It reads, as we go through the day, we pause. You know that step 11 pause means we can stop any time of the day. When we run into something, we can pause, talk to our higher power for a moment and keep agitated or doubtful, right? And we ask for the right thought or action. Well, there's a key point here. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. Yes, his will be done, because my will, running on self-will, it had me dead. But I was spiritually dead. I was mentally dead. I was all just might as well say physically dead. My body couldn't function without alcohol, so that was a big problem in my life. So, uh, you know, then the book goes on to bring out some other stuff. We alcoholics are undisciplined, right? As I said earlier, I was a hard-headed joker. That meant I was undisciplined. When I was in the military, I get a direct order. I'm not doing it. I tell them I'm not doing it. Y'all can discipline me any way you want to do. So my first AA meeting, that the military ordered me to go on. I shared this too last week. They sent me to AA in '83, and I did not like the first meeting I went to. I went back and told them people I ain't going back to that room no more. Them people are miserable. You taking out an hour of my drinking time. I refused to go. So I took a little discipline. I kept right on going. I kept right on drinking. So, you know, we very undisciplined. But it took this alcohol, all them years of struggling with this thing, trying to beat it myself. But I couldn't beat it because it's above my pay grade. That's something I couldn't do on my own. So I took the discipline. And then years later in the military, I started getting a whole lot of consequences. The consequences didn't make me an alcoholic, though, because I was disciplined, I was hard-headed, I was out of control, sure enough, out of control. So then I love when the paragraph on the page on the reading on 88 says, so we let God discipline us in a simple way that they have just outlined. So God does the disciplining for us. God is the one who solves our problem. I can't take credit for my sobriety. I can't take credit for what God has done for me. He simply did for me what I couldn't do for myself, as well as He's done for all of us what we could not do for ourselves. And I'm so very grateful for it. I'm grateful for everybody in these rooms today. Man, we're sitting here in a meeting, and that's a beautiful thing. At least we're not somewhere killing ourselves with more alcohol. Alcohol simply beat me up to the fullest. So then I want to reflect on something else here. on page 14. Yeah, I want to hit a point on page 14, Dan, where it says simple but not easy. And then we'll go down to what Bill says, sudden and profound. We'll touch on that just a second.
Yeah, sure. Page 14, everybody. Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. These were revolutionary and drastic proposals, but the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. There was a sense of victory, followed by such a peace and serenity as I had never known. There was utter confidence. I felt lifted up, as though the great clean wind of a mountain top blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Thank you, Brother Dan. Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. Yes, no doubt. See, self-centeredness myself was my problem. My greatest obsession was with myself. I always obsessed on how I can do better, how I can stop this alcohol, how I could control this alcohol. But you know, we know how the results come out. An alcoholic can't control his alcohol. You know, I lost the power of choice and drink a very long time ago. And I kept trying and trying and trying, and it never worked. So through this process laid out for us in this big book, meant destruction of self-centeredness. This had to be done. Now, it says the big book it says it's a book of suggestions, right? These were must. This is a must for me. As well, for me, the whole book is a darn must. Because if I must didn't do it, I'd still be drunk today. So I don't mind sharing that part. So then it goes on to say, I must turn in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. Now, this is actually a verse that comes out of the other big book that I read, the Father of lights. That's the power that's greater than us. He rules from the heaven. Let's see them knuckleheads. And you know, we here on the earth. So but then Bill goes on to say, these were revolutionary and drastic proposals. This was a severe thing, right? This is very severe. And then it's extreme. Yes. But then he said the moment that he fully accepted them, the effect was electric. You know, I didn't have a white light experience like Bill because I was in these rooms over 3 decades trying to get myself sober. The self-centeredness kept me from getting the help that's put out in this book. So, you know, but when I came to believe, right, uh, and got out of that self-centeredness, then I could turn over things to God. And he's the one that solves all my problems. He solves them all. Uh, then Bill goes on to mention there was a sense of victory followed by such a peace and serenity. Well, it talks about this serenity down in the promises on page 83 and 84. It says, peace and serenity as I had ever known. He said, there was utter confidence. I felt lifted up as though a great clean wind on the mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. Well, God came to me gradually, as I mentioned. It was not a sudden thing. It was not an overnight matter. Just like us in recovery, the big book mentions this is not an overnight matter. It must continue for a lifetime. Well, I kept myself for a lifetime. So now I'm so grateful for what God has done not only for me, but for all of us. You know, we granted a stay of execution today by taking the steps in this program. And it's, you know, it's a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. And this is expanded, right? Page 84 and 85 reflects on the idea of this daily reprieve. So, you know, it's a beautiful spot to be with. And also when it means destruction of this self-centeredness and selfishness, I like to touch on this couple of sentences in the back of the book in the spiritual experience, and then we'll have to close it out. Page 5, 6, or 7. and I'll take it out from there, Dan. And it goes on to the fourth sentence from the bottom of the page on the spiritual experience. And it reads, for it often takes place in a few months, could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. Yes, it could not happen. They didn't have no discipline. But then with few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Remember on page 55, it mentioned what that power was? The power was, the reality was found deep down within us. And it goes on to say, most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of a spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Thank God for this program. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. Talking about that power greater than ourselves. You know, back in step 3, right? We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Well, the experience here would be grounded in step 11, having had it sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. Okay. Thank God. Thank everybody for being here today. Thank you, Brother Dan, for your assistance. We just talked about a little bit of faith today and maybe how we can attain this faith. As Bill Wilson says several times, faith without works is dead. And so true for an alcoholic of our type. So God bless everybody. Happy Sunday. Any questions or comments? Dan, after Dan close out here, open it up. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. The recording will now stop.